Hello, everyone. Cole here with episode 29 of Questions for Cole. It's November 18th, 2020. I received a lot of questions this week. Thanks to all of you for sending them in. I'm going to answer 3 of those today and save some for next week, too. So, first of all, a very good question that actually came out of our first confirmation class a couple of weeks ago. We were having a discussion about the Bible and how all the different books of the Bible were written by various different people. And the question came up, when did all of these different books of the Bible actually get put into what we now call the Bible? So first of all, we have to divide that question into 2 parts because we have the Old Testament on one hand, or the Hebrew Bible as it is called, that was written before the time of Jesus, and then we have the New Testament, which was written after the time of Jesus. The Old Testament, which contains many different kinds of writing such as history, law, poetry, proverbs, prophetic writings, and more, that was written over a very long period of time. And even before it was written down, much of it was part of what is called oral tradition, which just means that people would pass the stories along verbally from one generation to the next down through the ages before any of the stories were actually written down. And different parts of the Old Testament were considered to be scripture or authoritative at different times as history unfolded. It's believed that the first 5 books of the Old Testament, also known as the Torah, were widely accepted as scripture around the 5th century BC, so 500 years before the time of Jesus. Some of the prophetic books became seen as scripture a few hundred years later, about the 2nd century BC. And some of the other books in the Old Testament were only accepted as scripture even later, not long before the birth of Jesus. There were also other books that told stories of God that were in existence, and very slowly over time, different groups decided which of those books were going to be included as Holy Scripture and which were not. The story of the New Testament is very similar in that there were many books about Jesus and letters about the early church, some of which ended up being claimed as part of the Bible. Others were not included. And scholars suggest that even the Gospels were oral tradition passed along for some years before they were recorded and officially seen as scriptural. And it wasn't until the 4th century AD that the first widespread edition of the Bible as we know it today existed. That's the earliest that scholars can find evidence of a Bible that contains all 66 books that we know as the Bible today. That includes the 39 books in the Old Testament and the 27 books in the New Testament. Before that time, between the 2nd and 4th centuries AD, there was a long and winding journey, different books being accepted as New Testament scripture by different traditions of the Christian church, different denominations. And there were councils that were held in which groups of Christian leaders tried to decide which books and letters should be seen as scripture and which ones should not. It is quite a fascinating study. And as you get deeper and deeper into reading about that history, you begin to see the Bible in a new light. It doesn't take anything away from the Bible. In fact, I think it just adds another important layer to what God is trying to tell us. It shows us that the Bible is a wonderfully complicated book, and its messages to us need to be contemplated and meditated upon, discussed and thought through with the help of wise elders and scholars and historians and friends and God. We have a rich history of all of that happening from the very beginning as people have tried to figure out the mysteries of God and Jesus in their time and tried to discern what those messages and stories and truths meant for them, just as we try to discover what they mean for us. The next question came out of a discussion I was having in which someone used the phrase raising Cain. You've probably heard that phrase and you may know what it means, but that led to a question about what that phrase actually means and where it came from. Well, it comes from the biblical story of the 2 sons of Adam and Eve in the book of Genesis, right at the beginning of the Bible. I won't repeat that whole story of Cain and Abel, but you might remember that it does not end well. In fact, Cain ends up murdering his brother Abel. Somewhere around the 14th century, so about 700 years ago now, the phrase to raise came to be used to mean to conjure up or to cause a spirit to appear. So the phrase to raise Cain or raising Cain meant that someone was causing trouble, stirring things up. So much trouble that it was like they were conjuring up the spirit of Cain, the world's first murderer. There you have it. And lastly, someone asked me a question this week about all the different places that I have served in ministry before Selkirk. That's an easy one. My very first experience in ministry was a year-long internship in Kenora, Saskatchewan. That was part of my theological training through St. Andrew's College. And then my first official placement after graduation was in a rural Manitoba pastoral charge where there were 3 churches in McCreary and Kelwood and Alonza. Then from there I served in southwestern Manitoba in Killarney and Ninette, and then in Winnipeg with the new experimental Spirit Path ministry, and now in Selkirk. Thanks for those questions. That's it for this week. As I said, there were more questions this past week, but I'll save some of those for next time. But don't let that stop you. If you have a question, send it in and I will get to it soon. Have a good week, everyone. Take care of yourselves and others, and only raise Cain if you absolutely have to. God be with you.